I think the road is a good listener. Somebody said to me recently, and I think that absolutely hits the nail on the head. If you're working on your physical fitness, then why not double up? And I like to learn, and I just wouldn't have the time otherwise. So yeah, learn while you burn. That movement day in, day out is it's what keeps my mental health in check. I try not to set goals as such. I've always sort of said a goal feels a little bit too definitive, a bit too final. If you set a goal that you're working towards, then it implies that there's an end point. And I don't feel as though there is an end point. So I'm Jamie. I'm a 38-year-old running dad from Newcastle upon Tyne. I've been running for maybe 5 or so years, but ramped it up really kind of during lockdown. Mainly just for the mental health benefits more than anything. I find that keeping active physically keeps me mentally in check as well. So I share that journey across various social media channels. So that following has kind of grown a little bit over the years, and just hoping that by getting out and getting moving, I'm perhaps inspiring and motivating others to do the same.
Talk to me about that first time that you popped on a pair of trainers and got out the door then.
So to go back to the very, very start, we'd have to rewind back to maybe 1999. So I was a 14-year-old schoolboy, and my dad's friend, who was a keen sportsman, used to play rugby for England, and he used to take us down to the local running track on a Tuesday and a Thursday night just to train. I maybe kept that up for 6 months, 12 months, something like that, before kind of teenage life got in the way. I hung up those running shoes for a few years, picked them back up again, I think in maybe 2010. I signed up for the Great North Run, so world's biggest half marathon, local to me up here in the Northeast. Did the Great North Run, and I think with very little training, and vowed never to put on a pair of running shoes again. It wasn't really for me. Fast forward 6 years from then, and I signed up again for whatever reason in 2016. Again, got through without any training, sort of vowed again never to go for another run. Found myself signing up in 2017. I've always been pretty active, but it was mainly like a bit of running was just usually a 5 or 10 minute warm up to do weights more than anything. But found myself signing up for whatever reason again in 2017, got a membership to the Great North Run, and I've done it every year since. And in the past few years, that running is sort of, I've switched from doing like running just as a warm up to it's the only thing I do really. I would do it every day if I could, but I tend to try and run maybe between 4 and 6 times a week, depending on other stuff.
What is that switch like when you do change from, running as a warm up or running to keep fit, I guess, to actually running to quote unquote run? Like, what is that change like, and how has that been different?
I think for me, so I had a bit of a back injury. I'd sort of pulled my back. I can't remember exactly what year it was. It may have been 2017 or 2018. And so I sort of, I like to get a bit of a sweat on. I like to stay active and keep moving. And because I wasn't able to do any sort of the weight lifting, I used to do quite a lot of calisthenics, so a lot of body weight training type stuff, handstands, human flag, all of this sort of like party trick type stuff. And I just couldn't do that because my back just wouldn't hold me horizontally for very long anymore. So I just found that it was a bit of a natural shift just to have that movement, to get those endorphins somehow. And I sort of kept it up just during that period of injury, but really it was more in like 2019. I'm sure we might get into this a little bit more shortly, but I lost one of my oldest and best friends, and the running just sort of helped kind of get through that. And that was really the full switch, I think, coupled with 2020 being kind of global pandemic and all of that sort of stuff, and gyms were closed. And so that was the daily activity that I found myself doing. So the shift, it wasn't sort of a mental, like I hadn't intended to make the shift. It just sort of naturally happened over a period of time. And now I probably don't do any strength training other than throw my kids around the place, really. So I know I probably should to maybe complement the running that I do, but I just find myself just wanting to lace up. It's my main activity that I find helps.
I definitely did want to touch on 2019. Talk to me about that whole situation, what happened, and how the running kind of helped you get through it and deal with it.
Yeah, so in August 2019, I lost one of my best friends, Anthony, to suicide. It was really unexpected, a big shock. I think to everybody that sort of we grew up with and family and friends, it really came out of the blue, and I found it quite difficult. At the time, I'd been speaking to him literally the day before, actually, about running shoes. I was sort of running a little bit more, and he started running, and he was just asking me some stuff, some recommendations. And from then to sort of do that the next day or two, I just yeah, I found it really difficult to cope with. Like, why maybe not mention something when we were talking, or could you not have reached out or something, or why hadn't I spotted that something wasn't quite right? Um, and I just sort of found myself over the rest of that year in 2019, so sort of through August, September, as we led in towards Christmas, I just found myself spending more time out on the roads, just away from the distractions of busy family and work life, just sort of thinking and reminiscing and grieving and all of that sort of stuff. And that time away just really, really helped me maybe not understand what had happened, but to come to terms with it in some way. So because the running really helped me as we headed into 2020, I sort of set about a challenge to run. And as I said, I wasn't a big runner at the time, but just to run as many half marathons in the year of 2020 as I could and raise money for the Campaign Against Living Miserably, which were a charity that helped Anthony's family and friends during their difficult time. And I set the challenge. I was going to try and average a little over one a week and come in at 60 half marathons in the year, and ended up on 70 plus an ultra marathon. And as I got to the halfway point of the year, I was around about on track. But I think at that point, it had just become so much part of my daily life that I was sort of doing back to back half marathons like day in, day out. And it really ramped up towards the end. So I found I was able to do a little bit more mileage towards the end. But what it really did is it helped to raise a bit of funds and hopefully a lot of awareness for the Campaign Against Living Miserably and the importance of mental health and talking and all of that sort of stuff. I kind of made it onto local radio, made it into newspapers and stuff like that. So it really, I felt like from a really negative situation, I managed to maybe put a little bit of good back in the world. But what it sort of, it taught me, and what I found as well, coupled with kind of the global pandemic, is that movement day in, day out is what keeps my mental health in check. So outside of running, I've got a pretty stressful life, pretty busy life in terms of family and work. And if I didn't have that movement, that bit of fresh air, that bit of alone time on a morning, then I think those stresses it could quite easily get on top of me. And I know that happens to quite a lot of people. So I'm a huge advocate for that movement. And that's what I try and sort of inspire people to do through the various channels that I fortunately have, just to try and promote those mental health benefits and how it really helped me. So obviously, a lot of us went through the pandemic, and we each had a slightly different version of it. So I worked from home the whole time, didn't kind of have any time off. I had two young children that we had to homeschool. It was highly stressful. My mum was terminally ill, and we were unable to see her despite living just a few doors away from each other. Well, we could see her, but we would stand at the end of her driveway, and all she wanted to do was hug the kids. And just, I think all of those stresses, being in the pressure cooker of being stuck in the house all day with kids that just didn't understand why they couldn't go to the park. So I think my kids were between 6 and 4, so that age where they need to be out there interacting with other kids, and that pressure, just kind of getting out and getting that movement on a morning, it just really helped to sort of reset the balance in kind of my mind. And as we headed into 2021 and beyond, I just continued with that, and I sort of rely on it now just as a bit of a de-stress, bit of thinking time, bit of processing time, a bit of alone time. It's I can't really speak highly enough of it because it's just become such a big part of kind of daily and weekly life.
And I think that's something like everybody or a lot of people that are listening to this will relate to. Certainly, it's definitely something I always say. Like, my day is infinitely different if I go for a run in the morning and if I don't go for a run in the morning. Does it feel a little bit like running keeps you connected to Anthony as well?
It does, because, like I said, life gets pretty busy, and without it, I don't have a lot of spare time. And it's not just Anthea, it's my mum as well. So she passed away. So actually, my last photograph with her was 2 years ago today. So that memory just popped up on Facebook this morning. So she passed away on the 26th of January 2 years ago. So the anniversary is coming up. And during that time as well of losing her, she was battling cancer for many years. And just sort of being there and seeing her get progressively more ill, it was another really difficult time. So it helped me through that as well, and the loss of her. So anytime I'm out, they always get some focus, some thinking time, and I'll think back through with Anthony just some of the stupid stuff we used to get up to as kids, and it's really, really happy memories. And similar with my mum, and just the thinking through the times growing up, and it's just time that I wouldn't sit and just think about this sort of stuff, just due to lack of time. So that connection, I might switch my headphones off and just, as I'm running at sunrise or whatever, just think and enjoy that moment.
I think as well, like, running doesn't discriminate, does it? What's going on in your life? It doesn't think, oh, something really good's happening, you're going to run really well. Something really bad's happening, you're going to run really badly. It's just one of those things that's always there. And if you stay consistent with it, it's there for you in a way.
Yeah. I think the road is a good listener. Somebody said to me recently, and I think that absolutely hits the nail on the head, because whether you're having a good day, it'll make your day even better. If you're having a bad day, it'll improve your day. And if you're having a day somewhere in between, it will just always, you never regret going for a run. I find you always finish a run up feeling better than when you started it, even if you go into it in the greatest mood ever. So the road is a good listener. And whether you speak out loud, which I sometimes do as well, I sort of live out in the middle of nowhere, and I find myself running along the country lanes. Like, I might talk out loud to nobody, but it helps me. I might like speak to my mum or whatever. And it's just a great way to just get your thoughts out, get your feelings out, and come back feeling recharged. And if it's not a morning run, sometimes if I find myself, I might get pretty stressed out at work. I might find I've got 40 minutes between meetings, and I tend to be sat here at my desk, and I can just quickly lace up and just jump on there for 20, 25 minutes, jump on the treadmill, and I'll come back in the afternoon and my productivity levels will have spiked again. I may have just had an idea. I tend to have like my greatest, most creative ideas when I'm not distracted by other stuff going on, because I'm just out there on the roads or whatever. So I just find it's a great mind reset, and I hope that more people realize that.
I absolutely love that phrase. The road is a good listener. I've not heard that before, but
yeah, it's a good one. That's a good one.
That's so true, isn't it? I mean, it's merch, mate. I have to say, it's merch. Isn't it?
Yeah, I might copyright that, stick it on a t-shirt. Yeah,
that's what I was about to say. But it is just so true. And productivity and mental health, and I think something that's happened through lockdown, and certainly something I've discovered from doing this podcast and working closely with RunThrough, is kind of running to help and aid people's daily life has just skyrocketed. Mm-hmm. And I think that COVID was a massive discovery point for a lot of people. For somebody obviously that lives in that running space on social as well, is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, and I think so. I set my Instagram channel up to track that challenge to see how many marathons I could run. And I think it was just a matter of sort of the timing of it. So I set the page. Obviously, I started the challenge at the beginning of the year in January, and I set my page up on my birthday, so in early March, just as we sort of headed into lockdown across the globe. And I think that was the time where a lot of people, without the ability to get to gyms, turned to other activities, predominantly running, because, well, here in the UK we were allowed out once a day or whatever. And the best way to do that, I felt, to get some fresh air, was to breathe it heavily and hard into your lungs. So more and more people turned to running, and I think it was a really intense period of adoption from a running standpoint. So whilst I was sort of kind of growing as a runner, a lot of other people were starting out on their journey as well. And I think the journey that I was sort of portraying in terms of trying to cover off those half marathons, from a mental health aspect, it seemed to resonate with a lot of people that were kicking off their own journeys. And I think that's what sort of helped with the traction of the channel, that then sort of throughout the period of that year, and then the subsequent years has become more about kind of motivation and like the odd cheesy voiceover type video. But if it means that one person sticks a pair of running shoes on and heads out the door, then I kind of feel like I've achieved something just by promoting that movement, and that it's important to everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I bet you do that 100%. Like the Instagram's brilliant, and cheesy voiceover is a funny thing to say, but you know what the algorithm likes, and at the same time that I've never heard you do a cheesy one, and it's always very inspiring. So people cling on to that, don't they? And if, like you say, it gets one person out onto the road, if it gets that road to listen to one person, that's, yeah, I guess you've done the job, haven't you?
Definitely. And no, I'm absolutely okay with being called cheesy, because it is what it is. But so I kind of go through life, and I really like to listen to audiobooks. So a big thing I do whenever, and I switched a few years back from listening to music, because I found that I had the same playlist from uni days. So 20 years ago, I had the same playlist on repeat. So I was just listening to the same hour-long playlist over and over again, and I was spending maybe 6 or 8 hours out on the roads every week. So why would I want to listen to the same song that many times? And so I switched to listen to audiobooks. And cheesy quote, but I call it "Learn while you burn," because
Mate, I've got it on my notes. I was going to ask about it, because I love that. I just wanted something I was going to ask about. Learn while you burn. I'd not heard it before. I'd seen it on your page. I've seen everybody asking for recommendations. I've never even thought about doing it, but I'm definitely going to do it now. Unreal.
Yeah, I did. It was just yesterday that I put the reel out, I think, just asking for recommendations, because I'd finished a book that it was one of those where I finished it and I just hit play again without even thinking about it, and it's maybe 10 hours long. And so I've done that twice this past month, that same book. And because I always find the second listen, you pick up something that you missed the first time around. So there's books that I've listened to 4 or 5 times, and I'll get through a couple of books a month. And it's because, back to the point earlier, that life gets really busy for a lot of people when the working day starts. So my day, I need to be back in the house before 7:30 when the kids get up. So any me time has to happen before that. And I could quite happily sit and read a book for 2 hours, or I could get out, get a run done, and read a book at the same time, or listen to a book at the same time. So that learn while you burn thing just became something that I think I said out loud for the first time maybe a year or maybe even 2 years ago. And it's just something that I think if you're working on your physical fitness, then why not double up and grow mentally as well, have a bit of mental growth. And I'll listen to anything. I've probably been through every running book in the world, whether it's business books, whether it's sort of I kicked off another one this morning just to try and understand the way that different people think. I've done books on introverts versus extroverts and all kinds of stuff. It's I like to learn, and I just wouldn't have the time otherwise. So yeah, learn while you burn.
I think as well, like if you were telling somebody, I'm reading a book a week, that is something like you'd be like, that's very impressive. Like
Yeah.
to do that, you must be using all of your spare time to do it. But actually, if you think of, I don't know, if you're in a marathon build or whatever, like you say, you might be training for 6 to 10 hours a week.
Hmm.
You could genuinely do a book a week,
Yeah.
which is like so much knowledge that you would not like you wouldn't have, right?
Exactly. And I just find, because I'm interested in so much stuff, but I don't have the time, and I use it on the commute to work as well. I'll listen to a book maybe, and I might have a couple of books on the go at a time. On the way to work, I might have like a business related one, because I feel that that gets my mind engaged and ready for kind of corporate life. And then I might have something a bit more kind of that I find personally interesting outside of that, whether it's a running book or a history book or whatever. I just think, yeah, to be able to double up and kill two birds with one stone. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, I can't run without music. I just can't do it. But you can. It just takes a couple of times. And what I found, it was during 2020, I think, during the half marathon challenge. That's when I switched and joined Audible and started listening to books. And after the first couple of times where I think people use music as distraction, so it can kind of take you away from where you currently are, and it takes you back. That playlist that reminded me of uni, it just reminded me of really good times with good friends having a laugh. But if you can sort of focus on a book, then that can take you away as well, and you suddenly forget. I would just be miles and miles into a run, and I'd sort of kind of come back out of this daydream that I was having while I was listening to the book, and realize, oh, I've ticked off another 5 or 6 kilometers there. And you just get lost in it. And I love that.
I think as well, like it probably plays its part in different speeds, different sessions, different distances. Like I can imagine listening to a book on a long, easy run, let's say.
Yeah.
For me personally, I probably can't imagine doing it on, a session where I'm really flogging myself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're not going to go out and listen to one while you're racing. That's when
exactly
that's
that.
When
but I think people that's when that hard and easy running thing kind of comes into play as well, because you shouldn't be going out and needing something to distract yourself all the time, should you?
Yes, no. So I should have maybe said that. So probably around 80% of my running is fairly chilled, sort of easy pace. And so that's when, if I'm going out and doing an all-out like interval session or whatever, then it's not the time to try and be focusing on the chimp paradox or whatever. It's you pick your times, but I'm never going to be sort of as fast. I'm never going to be like a world record holder. I'm never going to be as fast as I was a few years ago. So my focus has shifted just towards distance, just banking the miles. And a lot of those runs are just chilled, just super easy. And it's more of a mental benefit than a physical benefit. So that's why it works for me on most of my runs. It's audiobooks.
I know you're a dad first, Jamie. Like we've covered your family life a little bit, and when you first introduced yourself, you said you were a running dad, and that's something I love about your channel as well. You were always very open about like having to get it in around the family, and that's your time, but you need to be back by 7:30.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Because that's something that a lot of people have, and maybe they lose their running when they do start a family. How is that something that you have managed to kind of balance over the years?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point. So everybody that has kids understands how intense it is, particularly when they're really young. And what I had to do is, so I used to always be pretty active, and before kids, I would finish work. I might go to the gym for an hour before coming home or whatever. So I'd get home 6:30, 7:00, do dinner, and that was okay at that stage in my life. But then kids came along, and that didn't work anymore. I needed to be home once I'd finished work. And even the mornings as well, as I said before, from 7:30, that's alarm clock time for the kids. So my kids are 10, 8, and 2. So once that alarm clock goes off and the preschool activities all kick off, it's get ready, get breakfast, where's your shoes, where's your jumper, all of that. It's absolute carnage. So the only way that I could sort of shift and still be able to have that thinking time, that alone time, that mental brain reset time, was to move from those evening activities and start setting an alarm slightly earlier and slightly early every day. And so when my kids were really young, as they were first born, I sort of stop activity for a while, really, because at that point sleep's more important, and stuff like that. But I found as the kids got slightly older and they were sleeping a little better, I could start introducing more and more activity. And now my 2-year-old sort of more often than not sleeps through the night. So I can get up at my alarm set for 5:15. I'll get up, head downstairs. I do 30 minutes of sort of bit of light dynamic stretching, warming up and getting ready. And I'm usually out of the door between 5:45 and 6, and home by 7, between 7:15 and 7:25, ready to go start switching bedroom lights on and telling people that they need to get up. And I just have to find the time. And that was the only time that I can find, because by the time they've gone to bed on an evening, which is sort of between 8 and 9 p.m. For the older two, it would be impossible for me to go out there. And I think all of the endorphins that I would get from doing an activity at that stage, I would just then lie awake all night with the excitement of having been out for a run. Because when I have been out, I'm like an excitable puppy for like a couple of hours afterwards. So to try and wind down after just going and boxing off a long run late in the evening just wouldn't work. That's when I tend to have to tidy the house anyway, of the chaos that's ensued after school. So yeah, I mean, it is a balancing act, but I think in terms of where you prioritize your time, if you're really keen to get active and stay active, then you've just got to flex, maybe sacrifice a little bit of sleep, or try and get to bed a little earlier, just so you can get up earlier before everybody else is awake.
It's about prioritizing, isn't it, I guess? And like we've already mentioned in this conversation, it is a big priority because it does so much for you in other aspects of your life. So it's got to get in somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And I probably get somewhere between, it depends. I slept for 6 hours and 59 minutes last night, which is actually a pretty good night. It's usually somewhere between 6 and 7.5 hours. There's the odd anomaly when I may switch my alarm clock off, or on a rest day, and I'll get 9 hours of sleep, which is
body's like,
great.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, I wake up, and then on the days when I don't exercise, I feel a lot more lethargic, a lot more like I'm just missing that little bit of boost that I'll have got if I'd have got up and got out, even just to do a little bit of movement. But I know it's really important from a long-term sustainability perspective. So I try not to run like every day. So I'll do maybe Monday, have a rest day on Tuesday, and just catch up on that bit of sleep that I've maybe missed by doing between 10 and 13 or so miles on a Monday morning. I'll catch up on sleep on Tuesday, run again on Wednesday, a harder session, catch up on sleep on Thursday. Then I run Friday, Saturday. Saturday is long run because I know Sunday we haven't got a lot on. So the mornings, I tend to have a little bit more relaxation time. So you've got to keep it sustainable as well. But yeah, there's always balance to be found, and there is always time to be found. It's just how you prioritize the 24 chips that you're given out of each day.
Do you think you'll change as the kids get older? Do you think those kind of early runs will change into runs that are a little bit later on, or do you kind of like this kind of routine that you've got going on?
So what I really love about it is the peace. So where I live, I'm out in the middle of pretty much nowhere. There's no paths or pavements. It's all just roads, country roads, beautiful scenery, and being there as the sun comes up, I think that's always where I'll kind of want to be. And I think just having sort of 2 hours where there's nobody else out there, there's 2 cars that sort of pass me at the same point of the same road at the same time every morning. And I wonder if they think the same thing about me, but I know that they must be on their morning commute because they're there at the same time every morning. And I wonder if they think, oh, there's that guy that's out running at the same time every other morning. So I think just having that, it's alone time, but you've sort of achieved a little something before, while so many other people would be asleep. But I completely understand that it's not for everyone. Not like my wife, for example, wouldn't necessarily enjoy getting up at that time. She would prefer to do exercise later in the day. I just think once I made the shift a few years ago to early morning running, I've never really looked back, because I just love it out there at that time in the morning.
I want to ask about personal running goals before we wrap up, mate, because Chicago for 2024, I believe.
Yeah.
What has been an event highlight to this point, and what do you hope to do in Chicago in 2024?
So yeah, to Chicago. So that's October this year, and it'll be my third marathon major. I think in terms of highlights, so I did my first marathon last year. I did London. I was given an opportunity with kind of only 6 weeks or so to go. So my longest run before that was, well, longest official run was I'd done an ultra marathon during 2020, but it was sort of stop, start. It was kind of slow progress. Aside from that, I think my longest run had been a half marathon or slightly over, maybe 25k one time. And so I kind of went within 6 weeks to ramp up to the marathon distance. And I think the atmosphere at London during that first ever marathon was just incredible. And I'll never forget that. Crossing Tower Bridge, I'm pretty sure I cried, which is, yeah, I mean, it's what it is. It's emotional kind of being out there anyway, but just the overwhelming of the whole atmosphere. So I think that will always play a really key part. And actually, no, as I say that, there's a memory that sort of come back that probably is the epitome of kind of the most emotional moment and memorable moment on any run, and that was during last year's Great North Run. So I mentioned before, I try and do the Great North Run every year, and part of the route passes by Anthony's house, and his family was stood at the side of the road, his mum and dad and one of our friends from school. And yeah, as I sort of came up the road, they'd spotted me, and his mum started crying, and his dad like ran out into the middle of the John Reed Road and like gave me a hug and a high five. So that's probably the most memorable kind of running moment, really emotional. But in terms of kind of goals going forward, I try not to set goals as such. I've always sort of said a goal feels a little bit too definitive, a bit too final. If you set a goal that you're working towards, then it implies that there's an end point. And I don't feel as though there is an end point. I feel as though races and maybe targets in a roundabout way, whether it's a, I don't know, sub 90 half marathon or a sub 3 marathon or whatever your target might be, I just feel as though that's a waypoint on a journey, and there'll be ups and downs either side of that. And as I touched on, I don't think I'll ever be as fast as I was maybe 3 or so years ago, and that's okay. So I don't set specific goals. I haven't got a specific goal for Chicago or any other marathons that I may take on this year. I'm just sort of thankful to kind of be able to keep moving, and while I can, I'll just enjoy every single footstep. Chicago is going to be amazing because it's another major marathon. I get to go over to the US for a few days and sort of enjoy the build-up and the aftermath of having run the marathon. So I'm super excited for it. But I haven't set a specific, I haven't got a goal time in mind or whatever, other than just enjoy the build-up. I enjoyed the marathon block training for London, and I did Berlin as well last year. So enjoy that, enjoy the journey. Don't worry about anyone else's race, just run your own race. Don't compare yourself to anyone else, and don't, when somebody asks you if you've got a specific time in mind, just to enjoy it. That's all I want to do.